Notes. These notes are of varying subject, sometimes amplification of the theme, sometimes book references, sometimes biographical. Some stories, too, have no note at all, though not many, being either self-explanatory or, in Sufi style, entities in themselves which should not be interfered with. The Dermis Probe. Although all Sufis are agreed that Sufism is a unity, scholars almost appear to vie with one another to find what it must have developed out of. The following are some of the sources and identifications claimed by a few specialists, who have succeeded only in showing that Sufism looks different to each one of them. Gnostics, J. W. Redhouse, The Mesnevi, London 1881, page 14. Neoplatonism and Christianity, Gertrude Bell, Poems from the Divan of Hafiz, London 1928, page 49. Shia Islam, Shamanism, Christianity, Dr. J. K. Burge, The Bektashi Order of Dervishes, Hartford 1939, pages 210 and following. Brahmina and Buddhists, Beghards and Beguines, Reverend T. P. Hughes, Dictionary of Islam, Lahore 1964 edition, page 620. Professor R. A. Nicholson is ultimately found to conclude, Sufism is undefinable. The Mystics of Islam, London 1914, page 8. These reactions dramatically illustrate the elephant in the dark syndrome, in which different men identify different parts of an elephant as a fan, a pillar, a rope, and so on. The original tale is given in my Tales of the Dervishes, London, Cape 1967, pages 25 and following, and in the Sufis, London, Cape 1969, from Hakim Sanai and Maulana Rumi. Salute to the Thief. Junaid of Baghdad, Abul Qasim Junaid, 9th century. His Sufic name was Prince of the Group, Syed al-Taifa. Impeccable in formal scholarship, he was for this styled Peacock of the Learned, Taus el-Ulema. He instructed his formal students in public and his mystical ones behind locked doors. He concentrated upon one of the 8 formulations of Habib Ajami, 8th century, and this school was called Junaidist, Junaidia. Additional material in my The Way of the Sufi, London, Cape 1968, pages 165 and following, and 246. The Critic. The technique described here is not intended to replace ordinary human assessment procedure in problems, but to exercise an additional point of view than the obvious. Other examples of non-linear thinking are given in my Reflections, London, Octagon Press 1968, Caravan of Dreams, London, Octagon Press 1968, and Wisdom of the Idiots, London, Octagon Press 1969. The materials of the locality. The reference is to time, place, people, Zaman, Makan, Ikhwan, carrying on Sufi teaching in accordance with the real characteristics of a situation, not by reproducing dogmatic behavior or other outward forms. The strange becomes commonplace. Alim Azimi allows himself to be attacked to dramatize a situation. This is known as the Malamati technique, incurring reproach to illustrate its absurdity, or the shallowness of the attacker, or the superficiality of the assumptions of the audience. Further explanations in my The Sufis and Tales of the Dervishes. Invisible service. The argument that emotion can form a barrier to perception. Dismissed. Wrath employed for dynamic purposes, to move someone, not to humiliate him. Frequently used by Mullah Jami and Najmuddin Kubra. See the Sufis and Tales of the Dervishes. 4 communities. stressing the Sufi process of prescribing according to the individual being dealt with, not applying training techniques regardless of the situation. Accumulated supplications. Sufic contention that right intention concentrates inner power, which can only benefit others with an equally right intention. But this doctrine denies the principle that, if it feels good, it must be good. Opinion and fact. This completely cuts across all ordinary comfortable beliefs that one can judge by appearances. A malamati, capacity to incur blame for a higher purpose, procedure, this is strikingly unique among Sufis, and is regarded by them as the reality of which masochism and reveling in holy suffering is the degeneration or disease. Full circle. Not a didactic tale, this is a teaching story, intended to exercise the mind along unfamiliar pathways, rather than to cause a belief in a hidden mechanism. Those who take it in the second sense will be regarded by the Sufi as being too prone to imagination. The insane. Ajnabi, the stranger, frequently crops up in Sufic tradition as the one who tests sincerity. If money, respect, or service, for instance, are given for outward show or personal satisfaction, this has to be revealed before the individual can make progress in finding his real self. Dervishes seeking to starve the artificial self of lesser nutriment are generally working on these lines and refuse gifts or honours. A group of Sufis. Such experiments as this are frequent in dervish law, the aim being to reveal the superficialities of judging by social, not spiritual, criteria. Salik on the road to Kandahar. Illustrative action of this kind is traditionally employed to emphasize that hope and fear are manipulative factors, operating on a shallow level. Recent Western work on conditioning is only now slowly making these mechanisms known to the modern mind. Rabia al-Adawiya coined the most repeated phrase on this subject when she said, "Lord, if I worship you from fear of hell, plunge me into hell. If I worship you from hope of paradise, deny me paradise. I seek to worship you for yourself alone." See The Way of the Sufi and the Sufis. Absent. Halkavi transmits many demonstration anecdotes like this one. His important The Food of Paradise, Tales of the Dervishes, pages 15 and following, was made into a children's book by Robert Graves and published in 1968 as The Poor Boy Who Followed His Star, London Cassell. As with many Sufi tales, the personalities, king, Sufi, in such interchanges, are lay figures standing for thought processes. Rumi says in the Mathnavi, "People say that these are stories which happened long ago, but naming Moses serves as an external appearance. Moses and Pharaoh are two of your entities, good man." 3 Sufi Masters. A recurrent Sufi theme that language has functions other than the overt meaning of the words. Sound may affect the brain. See my Special Problems in the Study of Sufi Ideas, London, Octagon Press, 1968, 2nd edition, pages 7 and 8. And in social situations, an energy may be dissipated by another energy. Secret knowledge. Aversion therapy is not a new discovery. This account describes a weeding out process. First, all who are easily influenced, then those who are obsessed. In this sense, Sufic selection of students differs completely from other methods, which often seek the easily influenced whom they welcome as enlightened people, and also court the support of the obsessed. Further instances are contained in my Caravan of Dreams and Wisdom of the Idiots. The mob. The Sufic capacity to detach from objects, thus preventing the development of idolatry and fixations upon externals, has a survival as well as a teaching value. Baffled commentators trying to determine what Sufis believe and encountering disavowals and contradictions have been compelled by their own assumptions to regard Sufism as chaotic or divided into different dogmas. With the greater availability of Sufi materials in recent years in the West, and their study by observers without preconceptions, a fascinating pattern of assessment of Sufism is now emerging. Poets as well as scientists are discerning substance in the materials, and not insisting upon being offered a narrow dogma to accept or reject. The distinguished poet Ted Hughes, for instance, says, in The Listener, London, October 29, 1964, "The Sufis, 50 million strong, must be the biggest society of sensible men there has ever been on earth." Invisible. The Sufi action is invisible. Its literature, while vital, is not sacred. Sacred is that which cannot be destroyed. Tayfuri. Ahmed Yasavi. Sufis work as much by exclusion as by inclusion of people, actions, and ideas. Yasavi, died 1166, figures in both the Naqshbandi and Bektashi chains of transmission of Sufism. He was a disciple of the master Abu Yusuf Hamadani, died 1140. A note on him is found in Systematics, Book 6, March 4, 1969, pages 313 to 314. For his central teaching, see my The Book of the Book, London, Octagon Press, 1969. The Steam of the Pot of Ikhtiyari. Ikhtiyari means the man who has choice. Sheikh Imdad Hussain of the Qadiris has recently written on the confusion engendered in the East and the West by deliberate Sufi behavior. See The Secret Garden of Mahmud Shabistari, translated by Johnson Pasha, London, Octagon Press, 1969. The Journey. This example of not prejudicing an action by concealing it from a participant is mirrored in several Sufi techniques described by 14 Orientalists in the Octagon Press Symposium New Research on Current Philosophical Systems, London, 1968. I don't know. This tale from India makes a Hindu identify a Sufi better than his own followers can. A recent survey on Sufi theory and techniques connected with this feature is William Foster's Sufi Studies Today, London, Octagon Press, 1968, out of print. How Kashmir got its name. The unexpected in Sufi theory and action. See also R. W. Davidson's Documents on Contemporary Dervish Communities, London, Octagon Press, 1966. The way which seems to lead to worthlessness. Similar and connecting incidents are to be found in my Reflections, Caravan of Dreams, and The Way of the Sufi. Qualities. Khida, the invisible guide. See The Sufis and Caravan of Dreams. This very typical account from the Khida corpus underlines the difference between imagined and real virtues. Anwar Abbasi stresses the choice between repute and effectiveness. The lay figure Mullah Nasruddin, see my The Exploits of the Incomparable Mullah Nasruddin, London, Cape, 1966, and The Pleasantries of the Incredible Mullah Nasruddin, London, Cape, 1968, is often used for this purpose. Protection. Sal, son of Abdullah of Tustar, was a teacher of Mansur, the great martyr of the 10th century. See the Sufis. His followers were called Salis. Dervishes in the phase of extreme effort, mujahida, are called Sali, of Sal. The aristocrat. The descendants of Muhammad include many of the Sufi teachers, including Abdul Qadir of Gilan and Mahuddin Naqshband. The tradition of the family, however, demands that the supposed inherited capacities must be brought into reality by achievements in the ordinary world. See William Foster's The Family of Hashim in Contemporary Review, London, May 1960. Grief and joy. Self-observation involves analysis of grief and joy. This is not the same as introspection and worrying. Innumerable Sufi stories are designed for observation purposes. The magician. This is one of the many Sufic anecdotes in this book which are believed to instruct on different levels, the factual one being the least important. Familiarization with prescribed Sufi literature may be an essential part of the student's preparation. The apparent paradox of the Sufi saying that the written word is meaningless, and also insisting upon its study, is that the interpretation of the writings comes at a later stage than their study. As the Russian scholar M. Filshtinsky recently noted, the material is usually on two planes. The earthly in them is only the allegory of the heavenly. In this mutual interchange of earthly and mystical planes lies the secret of the powerful influences exercised by the finest examples of Sufi lyrics. Arabic Literature, Academy of Sciences, Nauka, Moscow, 1966, page 201. Grammar. This tale, like some which follow it, being apparently critical of scholars, has traditionally produced energetic and indignant reactions from those who believe that academic activity and personality is being attacked. The purpose, however, is to reproach pedantry and shallow assumptions, at the worst, bad scholarship. The bad scholar is the incarnation of the parallel poor operation of the mind. For other examples, see my Wisdom of the Idiots. Dissatisfied. Sufi thinking holds that essential, simple, and higher truth underlies the complexities and verbiage found on lower levels. The Sufic method of scatter, however, involves exposing the student to numerous extrapolations from this truth, so that an idea may build up in his mind. The known is the bridge to the unknown. Conviction. People who change their opinions generally imagine that they always do so for rational reasons. This has always been denied by Sufis, and recent research by Western investigators shows that there are other reasons for opinion change, previously unknown. Professor Ward Edwards, University of Michigan Engineering Psychology Laboratory, showed in 1969 that while people can reach a decision from facts given to them, they have great difficulty in altering these conclusions even when better evidence is presented to them. The light taker. Sufi teaching primarily aims at preparing the student for experiences which would otherwise confuse and overwhelm him. The lower is transformed by contact with the higher. Interpretation. The formal acceptance of a disciple by a master is not the beginning of the contact, but the external demonstration of a relationship which already exists. Sufis interact with pupils through exercises such as sohbat, companionship, in which no word is spoken, when something is transferred from the master to the disciple, Such a concept would have seemed bizarre in the extreme to Western thinkers until recently. Dr. E. R. John, in Science, volume 159, page 1489, reports how cats can learn experiences from other cats by sheer association with them. It seems that our ancestors, with their schemes of apprentices passively watching their masters, also knew, like the observer cats, what they were doing. Work at the Brain Research Laboratories at New York Medical College, reported in New Scientist, April 11, 1968, page 89. Yusuf, son of Hayula. Opposition to Sufism, known in Europe and so styled by Roger Bacon in Britain through Andalusia as the Eastern wisdom, has been continuous if unsuccessful in the East. Many current Western opinions of the Sufis are derived from this fact. See my The Sufis, Passim. In China. Sufi knowledge, as Rumi, Sanai, and Ibn Arabi stress, bears little resemblance to the techniques and outward faces of religion, philosophy, mysticism, and other similar levels of study, though it is connected with them in a recognizable manner. To cause annoyance. The Sufi is aware of the likely reaction of his correspondent and builds this into his operation. This is an example of unperceived teaching. It is more common to find examples of teaching where the Sufi master removes himself from the experiment entirely to prevent subjective reactions. A recent report from Harvard Medical School, The Times, London, June 26, 1969, entitled "Psychiatrists Make Their Patients Ill," explains how the expectation of the individual causes him to act in a certain manner when he knows that the doctor is present or due to visit. Discouraging visitors. The necessity for a social or emotional ingredient in a teaching situation is denied by Sufis, in sharp contradiction of other persuasions, whose advocates invariably, in theory or reality, strive to include as many subjective and community ingredients as possible in teaching contexts. An astonishing parallel to the Sufi insistent on the relatively greater power of subtle communication to affect man is found in scientific work which shows that all living things, including man, are incredibly sensitive to waves of extraordinary weak energy, when more robust influences are excluded. See Monsieur Gauquelin's The Cosmic Clocks, London, P. Owen, 1969, pages 138 and following, 144 and 169, citing recent scientific work. Bahuddin. The forthrightness of Bahuddin Naqshband on occasion, as well as that of other Central Asian teachers, is typified in Jami, see Tales of the Dervishes, and Najmuddin Kubra, see the Sufis. Reading. With a sufficiency of jealous pedants monopolizing, in traditional manner, public interest, and often opposing Sufis in the manner recorded here, such an incident may well have happened in the past. But the tale is also intended to describe, in the persons of the scholars and the horse, certain automatic mental processes. Eyes and light. Salih of Merv was a noted Sufi of the 19th century. There is another traditional answer often quoted of Sufis: the weakness of the owl's eyesight is not the fault of the sun. Kasab of Mazar. Kasab, meaning butcher, is a poetic name, signifying one who dismembers bodies of irrelevant assumption to make their parts assimilable in the right manner. Digestion. The multiplicity of content and effect of Sufi teaching is characteristically emphasized here. Target. Sufis receive no permission to teach until they are known to have no urge to teach, which could be a mask for a desire for attention or power. Vocation, therefore, in Sufism has a special meaning and has no connection with the belief that one should spread the work. Teaching is, therefore, based upon capacity, not desire. The food of the peacock. This illustrates the Sufic theme that dervish lives contain work for the future as well as the present. Others sowed for me, I sow for others to come. The perfect man. The effect, not the appearance, is the dervish aim. The psychiatrist A. Reza Aristez's treatment of Jalaluddin, Rumi the Persian, Lahore, 1965, stressing the importance of experience, not institution, is most interesting. Whether this study succeeds or not, its enthusiastic welcome by the redoubtable Dr. Erich Fromm and his recognition of Rumi as one with a profound insight into the nature of man has contributed towards the present appreciation of Sufism as a higher study by man of man, and not, as formerly supposed, some kind of mystico-religious indoctrination system of a composite kind. Now begin. This principle, that a phase of Sufi work is for specific communities and varies with the audience, is the one most often violated by institutionalized Sufists, whose members, though more visible, are least recognizable by Sufis as Sufis. 1,000 dinars. This tale from Attar, see The Sufis for material on him, illustrates how a feeling of possession of money can accompany the believed detachment from it. Similar tales are to be found in The Way of the Sufi. The Ordeals. Junaid, Shibli, and Harari are three of the early classical masters. See The Sufis, Tales of the Dervishes, and The Way of the Sufi. Illustrative exclamations. As in many of the Nasruddin tales, the Sufi is miming the thought and behavior of his audience to give them an opportunity of examining it, as in a mirror. See The Exploits of the Incomparable Mullah Nasruddin and The Pleasantries of the Incredible Mullah Nasruddin. Success in discipleship. Capacity and not desire, most important factors in the Sufi quest. Aspiration may come first, but it must become effective through capacity if progress on the path is to become possible. Pomegranates. All real Sufi teachers test potential students to see whether they desire time, attention, comfort, or even discomfort, rather than knowledge and progress. This tale shows how time may be given for psychotherapy, not for illumination. Abdali. An illustration of the frequent condition, often unsuspected by the student, when he wants advantages, not instruction, from a teacher. Unfettered. Nuri means of light, because he was said to shine in the dark while teaching. A disciple of Sari el-Sakati, see the Sufis, he died in AD 908. He was an associate of Junaid, who called him Spy of the Hearts, Jasus el-Kulub, because of his reputed capacity to read thoughts. One of his most remembered sayings is, "This place, the earth, is for the service of God and for the attainment of unity with God." His full name was Hadrat, the Presence, Abul Hussein Ahmad ibn Muhammad al-Nuri. Musa of Isfahan. This Sufi capacity to be in the world, not of it, is demonstrated in the astonishing number of adepts who are distinguished in mundane activities as well as important in Sufism. So marked is this release of worldly capacity that it has been regarded as illustrative of the difference between the Sufi and other types of mystic who opt out of the world or at most distinguish themselves in worldly affairs. See My Oriental Magic, London, Octagon Press, 1956 and 1968. Sandals. The carefully chosen courses for Sufi students, which are found in teaching situations, have often been taken by imitators to be systems for general application. Such remarks as this one by Idries Shah should be read in this light. Struggle. The Sufi finds his development matter in analogy on any level of matter or substance. Sheikh Nadaf. The Yemenite Inquirer. Sufi books are stated to be written not only for audiences limited in time, they also exercise functions not recognized in other cultures as those of books at all. One reason for so many Sufis acquiring personal copies of books is that many sheikhs have insisted that a book studied by more than one person has parted with some of its substance and may have become depleted in some imperceptible manner. Minai's Journey. The existence of a concealed pattern in life is a frequent theme in Sufi tales. Minai means enameller. Cf. stories in Tales of the Dervishes, Caravan of Dreams, Reflections, and The Way of the Sufi. Only 3 Men in the World. This striking tale of Khidr emphasizes 2 approaches to life: to dominate one's environment, or to understand it before deciding where to harmonize and where to try to dominate. The Palace of the Man in Blue. Such expeditions as this, the dervish purposely testing people to see whether they display certain characteristics and whether they themselves perceive them, are frequent in the lives of the masters and in tasks set for disciples. Cf. Tales of the Dervishes, Caravan of Dreams. The Man Who Wanted Knowledge. It is widely believed, especially in the folklore tales which surround Sufism, that the real masters are cosmic agents of the secret people, those who administer the earth for time immemorial and eternal purposes. Cf. My Destination Mecca, London Octagon Press, 1969, and The Sufis. The Mantle. A special form of memory exercise is one of the Sufic practical philosophy techniques. Unwritten history. The common error of confusing emotionality with religion or goodness, hallowed by its embedding in formalized and social-rooted thought, in fact lays man open to manipulation for different purposes, constructive or otherwise. The Legend of the Cattleman. A parable of the rise, deterioration, secret refreshment, and final degeneration of idea systems, whether in the individual or in an institution. The Handicap. This is an inner exercise tale designed to be absorbed and dwelt upon in meditation. The effect of such tales as this has been noted by several critics as being at one and at the same time apparently banal, but yet capable of causing an acceptable effect upon the reader's mind. It is interesting to observe the unprompted reaction of thoughtful readers. The literary editor of the London Evening News, for example, says in regard to this type of material, "You have to resist the initial impulse to dismiss this sort of thing as just pseudo-profundity, and so give up at once. If you persevere, you discover that strange little bugs are laying eggs in your subconscious, and after a day or two begin to hatch out, as modified behaviour." A Look at a Book, July 15, 1969. How Things Work. A meditation tale for the purpose of making the mind familiar with certain structures of thought which relatively seldom occur in the ordinary way. Similar material is to be found in Reflections, 2nd edition, London, 1969. 3 Villages. Not a didactic story, this tale is intended to enable the pupil's consciousness to dwell upon mental relationships made specific as people and events. Sufis also shape such formats into tales to ensure their transmission through retelling for entertainment purposes. Other examples are to be found in Tales of the Dervishes, Wisdom of the Idiots, and Caravan of Dreams. The Sutra of Neglectfulness. A sutra is a screen or other object interposed between a person and a possible source of distraction during prayer. The word is used here to indicate that a sutra itself can become a cause of neglect as something which can attract attention at the expense of effective thinking. Remedy. This is a development meditation theme and is not intended to have any commentary. In the Land of Fools. This corpus of jokes is intended to exteriorize in human forms the patterns of individual thinking, and to explain that there are social incidents, real and possible, parallel to the mind's working. Geoffrey Grigson, the eminent literary critic, recently observed, in Country Life, November 21, 1968, a peculiar and advantageous psychological effect of Sufi jokes, and went so far as to call them an addendum to language. Man and Sufi. Affirming the Sufi statement that man is largely a projection of his own fantasy, and does not yet behave like one. Mullah Nuruddin Abdurrahman Jami, 1414-92, was an illustrious Persian poet, Naqshbandi Sufi, and professor at a special college at Herat. He wrote The Seven Thrones, from which Lawrence of Arabia is said to have derived the name of his major work, Seven Pillars of Wisdom. The Book. A permeation tale which Sufis of many orders are expected to know. Some aspects of special dervish tales are dealt with in my article, The Teaching Story, in the philosophical journal Point, Winter 1968-69. Dervishhood. This refers to a certain dervish mental succession exercise, here referred to as yesterday, today, and tomorrow, designed to give the student the ability to lift his thinking into a cycle beyond the customary human rut. The Reflection Chamber at Dushanbe underlines the uselessness of tasks if they become mere irksome duties, and the need to control extravagant attitudes towards a teacher. A Dar el-Fikr chamber is regarded as an instrument, not as a place for aesthetic enjoyment. Learning of the unripe. An example of current history which is put into writing and kept for teaching purposes only with the master's permission. Such extracts are often given a date after which they may not be used, or the date from which they are active, which may have antedated the actual event. This custom causes chronologists endless perplexity in dating documents. Bricks and walls. The ever-changing external form of Sufism, a source of the greatest confusion to well-meaning scholars, is concisely delineated here with this arresting parable. The whole and the thread. The total Sufi work often requires even great figures of the past to become, as time passes, only a part of a pattern of development. This doctrine of supersession permits the continued action of Sufis through alternative teachers, but deprives disciples of the satisfactions of personality worship. For the theory of the content, not the container, see my The Book of the Book, London 1969. The squirrel. The outward form of things, which includes their social aspect, though enjoyable to relatively ignorant participants, may be seen by a man of perception as causing affliction at another level, or blocking progress in another range. It is demonstration of this concept, not, as imagined, affection for insects, which caused some dervishes to attach bells to their shoes to warn beetles of their approach. So literal-minded are many chroniclers, imagining the figurative to mean the literal, that such individuals would have assumed that Diogenes was indeed seeking a man with a light in the daytime, unless the interpretation had been carefully spelt out to them. Bahuddin Naqshband said, Note by Bahuddin, expectation is twofold. Expectation of something anticipated, like sunrise, and expectation of something not yet experienced, like higher knowledge. Sufism deals with the latter. That is why Sufis prepare people for what they may expect. One of ours. An argumentative man will not even enter paradise without a struggle. Proverb. 3 reasons. This tale has been taken to mean that the Sufis claim that they alone can survive the test of manipulation, which they say is the means of maintaining formalized religion. But in Sufi schools, the anecdote is employed to emphasize the claim that there is an additional function of mind which may be developed. Exile. An illustration of the absurdity of applying ordinary comparisons to the admitted relationship between this world and the other. Authentic Sufi material on this theme is to be found in Textos Sufis, Calendar, Buenos Aires, 1969. The medicine. The teacher's instructions originate in an invisible pattern, and hence observance of any rules is of paramount importance. Some typical rules are given in my Oriental Magic, Chapter 7, and in the Sufis. Imitators, observing dervish reluctance to introduce too many rules, have sometimes set up groups without any at all, with resultant chaos. Ansari's answer. The sovereignty of the Sufi community, and the precedence accorded in many places to its adepts, is alluded to here. Traditionally, the descendants of the Prophet, including Bahuddin, take social precedence over non-Hashemite monarchs, since no national authority can bestow or remove the Sharifan or Sayyid title. Cf. Sir Olaf Caro in The Times, London, November 25th, 1967, Letters to the Editor. The gifts. This exercise is designed to instruct the student in how to avoid facile assumptions and to observe situations more closely. Few people are as yet aware how traditional materials of this kind are receiving the attention of scientific researchers. An interesting recent example is the research memorandum The Unfolding of Man, EPRC 6747-3, by the distinguished Professor Claudio Naranjo, carried out through the Stanford Research Institute and supported by the U.S. Office of Education, Bureau of Research, Washington. Only a few years ago, any investigation of human transformation under such distinguished auspices would have been unthinkable. The Fox Who Was Made a Sufi. A typical example of an entertaining anecdote including the exercise of thaumaturgical power, often attributed to developed Sufis, with other interesting features. This tale is regarded in Sufi circles as also containing an important interior framework for mental development. When a Man Comes to See You. The masters, Khwajagan, are noted for specializing in telepathic interchange with disciples and others. This method, apart from having other advantages, is believed to make it unnecessary to bypass subjective psychological conditions in suitable individuals, to enable heart to call to heart. A request. If you enjoyed this book, please review it on Amazon and Goodreads. Reviews are an author's best friend. To stay in touch with news on forthcoming editions of Idries Shah works, please sign up for the mailing list at bit.ly/ISF list. And to follow him on social media, please go to any of the following links. On Twitter at twitter.com/Idries Shah, on Facebook at facebook.com/Idries Shah, on YouTube at youtube.com/Idries Shah 999, on Pinterest at pinterest.com/Idries Shah, on Goodreads at bit.ly/ISGoodreads, and on Tumblr at idriesshah.tumblr.com, or on the main website at idriesshahfoundation.org. That was The Dermis Probe by Idries Shah. First published 1970, published in this edition 2016. Narrated by David Alt. This audiobook is copyright the estate of Idries Shah, all rights reserved.